Okay, welcome back. Hope you all had a great week. Today we're continuing our BCBA exam practice question series where we're going through a set of practice questions and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out bcbastudy.com. We currently offer 3 practice exams, a full task list study guide, and our combo pack, which includes everything. When you do pass, please let us know so we can include you in our Sunday shout out. Other than that, let's work hard, study hard, get to our questions. Question 1. Usain is training to run a 5K. He wants to complete the full 5K in 15 minutes. On Monday, he ran a 6-minute mile. On Tuesday, he ran a 5-minute and 45-minute mile. On Wednesday, he ran a 6-minute, 15-second mile. What is being compared in regard to Usain's mile time? Pretty straightforward question. Don't get bogged down in the additional information and numbers. Where do we start? Let's be sure we know what the question is asking. The question is asking about what is being compared as far as Usain's mile time goes. Well, we know he wants to run a full 5K in 15 minutes. So that's going to be Usain's full duration. But he's comparing the time it takes him to run each individual mile. So 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 45 seconds, 6 minutes, 15 seconds. So he's comparing these times against each other. Now, how is he measuring that time? Is he taking his average duration? No, he's not taking the average. He's taking the full duration of each mile and then comparing them against one another. So he's taking B, duration. He's not taking into response time. He's not timing how long in between runs he goes. And he's not taking average latency. Again, there is no average. He's simply taking a standard, simple duration measurement of each mile on each day and then comparing them to one another. Assumingly, he wants to decrease how fast he runs his mile to get to his goal. So what is being compared in regard to Usain's mile time? B, duration. You are contracted to work at a group home with 4 different children. On your first day, the supervisor provides you with 5 files for the children. You review the data, which indicates 2 children tantrum to escape from homework and 2 children are aggressive for attention. What should you do next? Now, this is a case where you are contracted out to work for this employer. However, this remains the same if you're transferred a new case, if someone transfers to your clinic from another clinic, if you're ever taking over for someone else and there's previous data. This is what we're talking about. What do we do with that data? How much of that data should influence our decision making? So after we review the data indicating tantrums are functioning for escape and aggression is attention, what do we do from there? A, begin writing a treatment plan based on this functional assessment. Well, you don't want to start writing your treatment plan yet. Why? Well, all this data is indirect. All this data is past data. All this data is from somebody else. You don't know how accurate it is. You don't know how valid it is. You don't know how reliable it is. It's hard to really say if this data is even useful to you. Can it guide you in your assessments? Sure. But we can't start writing a treatment based on 1, indirect data, and 2, data that we don't even know is good. B, interview the 4 children before progressing. Interviewing, again, is a sort of indirect assessment. Even though you're directly interviewing them, we're not watching as the tantrums occur and as the children aggress. Okay, we need something more direct, something where we can actually get in there, watch as the tantrum occurs, watch as the aggression occurs, start taking our own data and making our own decisions. So C, take the data into account, but conduct your own direct assessment. You don't have to write the data off completely. Again, you can let it guide your treatment, let it guide where you start with your assessment. But what you really need to do before moving on or moving to a treatment is doing your own direct assessment. You never write any sort of treatment without doing your own direct assessment. And then D, implement a multiple baseline design across subjects. Maybe down the line, you want to do research. You want to do an experimental design. You could certainly do that. We're not quite there yet, though. First, the 2 children or the 4 children apparently have different types of behaviors and different types of functions. The multiple baseline is going to be for an intervention targeting both of them. There's not enough data yet to back up the need for a multiple baseline design. So what you would do is take this data, consider it, let it guide you, but ultimately conduct your own direct assessment before moving forward. Blake works in a school district as a traveling BCBA. He consults for 2 schools in particular that embrace ABA in the classroom. Schools want to use testimonials from parents as part of an advertising campaign for the school. Is this allowed? In our ethics code, there are very specific rules about advertising. There are rules on using current client testimonials. You're not allowed to do it. There are rules on using previous client testimonials. You are allowed to do it as long as you stipulate whether it's solicited or unsolicited, and if you include a testimonial. And then there is using current and former clients in non-advertising purposes, which you are allowed to do. In this case, the school wants to use testimonials from parents as part of an advertising campaign for the school. Who has to abide by the ethical code? Behavior analyst. The school is not bound by our ethical code. With that said, is the school allowed to use testimonials from current clients or current students in an ad campaign? A, no, you cannot use testimonials from current clients. You can't. The behavior analyst cannot. Blake cannot. The school certainly can. And we're asking about the school. We're not talking about Blake, the BCBA. We're talking about the school. So A is ultimately irrelevant to the question being asked. B, no, you cannot use testimonials from current or past clients. Just not true. As a BCBA, as a behavior analyst, you're certainly allowed to use testimonials from past clients with certain stipulations in place. C, yes, the school is free to advertise your services as they please. Now, they can advertise the school all they want, but once they start advertising Blake, now they have to start working with Blake to make sure Blake is being ethical. And if Blake is being advertised by a current client using a testimonial, Blake has to point out to the district that it violates his ethical code. That leaves us with D. Yes, as long as the school advertises the school and not ABA. As long as the school isn't using current testimonials to advertise Blake and ABA, they're not in violation of Blake's code. As long as they're just talking about the school is free to do whatever they want. Our code doesn't dictate their advertising practices unless it starts crossing into Blake and ABA territory. So is this allowed? Yes, as long as the school advertises the school and not ABA. You implement an extinction procedure at the clinic to reduce socially maintained verbal scripting. If implemented correctly, you might expect what? When you get a question like this, we should, and when we're talking about decreasing or increasing behavior in one setting, we have to start thinking immediately about the ethics and about behavior contrast. Now, behavior contrast says if you increase behavior and change reinforcement schedules in one environment, the behavior tends to increase or decrease in another environment. So in this case, if we're putting socially maintained verbal scripting on extinction, we're changing that reinforcement schedule. What are we going to expect to happen? A, an immediate decrease in verbal scripting. Well, what actually occurs if extinction is done correctly? We go through extinction burst, meaning temporarily our behavior actually gets worse. B, an increase in tangible seeking behavior. There's no indication at all. This is for a tangible. There's no indication at all for the function. We just know it's socially maintained. There's really no indication tangible seeking behavior would change. Okay, we don't have any information about that. C, a decrease in social interaction. Again, we know verbal scripting is socially maintained, but we're not quite sure if this is their only social interaction they have. Again, you have to use the information given. We don't assume, we don't add information. If information isn't there, don't use it. So again, it leaves us with D, an increase in verbal scripting at home. And why? Well, we're implementing this procedure at the clinic. We're changing the reinforcement schedule at the clinic to reduce this maintained verbal scripting. What we can expect to happen is some contrast. There's going to be increase in verbal scripting at home where reinforcement could still be available. Therefore, if you're going to start implementing procedures like this, what do we need to do? We need to make sure they're consistent across environments. That helps limit behavior contrast. So implemented correctly, you might expect what? D, an increase in verbal scripting at home. Which discontinuous measurement procedure would allow a mother to collect data on all her children at once when she has a free moment? Really think about this question. All right, you should be able to predict this question. So one, we're talking about discontinuous measurements. Think about discontinuous measurement. Partial interval, whole interval, momentary, and planned activity check. Mother wants to collect data on all her children, so there's more than one subject, when she has a free moment. Now, when she has a free moment says what? It says she won't be able to watch them continuously, right? Only on a free moment can she go take data. Is partial interval recording going to be good to use on all her children at once when she has a free moment? Well, no, because with partial interval and whole interval, we have to be observing the learner for that entire interval in order to get accurate data. If she's got all her children, let's say it's 4 children, and she can only take data in a free moment, there's no way she could take whole interval recording or partial interval recording accurately using this method. What about momentary time sampling? Well, she could use momentary time sampling, but what is a better version of momentary time sampling for groups? Well, a planned activity check. A planned activity check is essentially momentary time sampling, but for a larger group. The mother, to take data on all her children when she had a free moment, she would walk in and observe all the children, whatever she's trying to observe, and mark a response if it's occurring, a non-response if it's not. That's the best way to discontinuously measure for a group when she has a free moment. She doesn't have to continuously watch an interval. She has a bunch of children at once. At the end of whatever time she has, or whatever free moment, she goes in, does a planned activity check, takes her data. The answer here is D. What are considered derivative measures? This is more just a review question. Chances are you won't get a question like this on the exam, but it's good to cover these type of things. So derivative measures are a type of measurement in ABA. They fall under the continuous measurement category, typically, and they're derived from some of the continuous measurement we use. So trials to criterion and percentage. Yes. Okay. If you didn't know, trials to criterion and percentages are considered derivative measures. Trials to criterion and frequency. Frequency is not. Percentage and duration. Duration is not. Duration and frequency. Duration and frequency are not. Which of the following are considered derivative measures? It's going to be A, trials to criterion and percentage. This is something you need to know and be familiar with. The most important factor to consider when identifying positive reinforcers is what? I still have BCBAs in training who mess this up. We have to get out of the habit or the way of thinking that positive reinforcers automatically means it's whatever the client loves. Negative punishment, positive punishment is automatically something they hate, okay? When we're reinforcing and punishing, we're worried about the behavior change. That's it. That stimuli or the stimulus that we use, whatever way it changes the behavior is how we classify it as a reinforcer or punisher. If I do a preference assessment, turns out the client loves their teddy bear. What if I give them the teddy bear at the wrong time and it punishes the behavior? Well, that teddy bear is now a punisher. Okay, so we have to be very, very smart when identifying positive reinforcers. So A, how much the client likes the reinforcer. That is certainly not the most important factor. Does it play a role? Yes, that's why we do preference assessments. It gets us closer to identifying potential reinforcers, but it is not at all the most important factor to consider. B, if the client likes the reinforcer better than other reinforcers. Again, not that important, right? How is it affecting the behavior? Not about this word like, okay? It's what happens to the behavior. See how the reinforcer affects the behavior. Good. How does it increase it? Does it maintain it? How strong is the increase? That's what we want to see when identifying positive reinforcers, how the reinforcer affects the behavior. And then D, if the reinforcer could possibly be punishing. Not our main concern. Now, I mean, you could obviously take it into consideration, but it's really not the most important factor to consider. The most important factor to consider when identifying positive reinforcers is C, how the reinforcer affects the behavior. Which of the following would most likely be effective as a positive reinforcement procedure? Okay, back-to-back positive reinforcement questions. Sometimes it goes that way. Let's just answer them to the best of our ability. So what do we know with positive reinforcement? We know we're adding a stimulus to increase behavior. So let's look. A, giving someone a beer the morning after a night out drinking with friends. All right, now we have to start considering motivating operations here. The value of this beer after a night out drinking in the morning has most likely what? It's most likely decreased. That night out has most likely abolished it as a consequence temporarily. Probably not the most effective as a positive reinforcement given the situation. But let's see. B, giving someone a Tylenol to help their headache. All right. Well, if we give the Tylenol, what's the consequence? The headache goes away. Is that positive reinforcement or negative? That would be negative. So be very careful. Okay. We're looking for a positive additional stimulus functioning as reinforcement. Tylenol is just going to remove the headache. In other words, negative reinforcement. C, giving someone ice cold water after a hard workout. Okay, again, think about motivating operations. The value of this cold water after a hard workout has increased probably significantly. Compare it to D, giving someone hot tea after a long run. Do you really want hot cocoa or hot tea or hot coffee after a long run? No, you want to cool down first. You want something cold, something refreshing, typically. Now, we're making a lot of assumptions here, but the question is it's aimed to identify, are you considering motivating operations when talking about reinforcement? Remember, things we use as reinforcement, their value can get altered based on motivating operations. So in this case, hard workout increases the value of ice cold water, typically. A long run does not typically increase the value of hot tea. So which of the following would most likely be effective as a positive reinforcement procedure? Can be C, giving someone ice cold water after a hard workout. Finally, what is the difference between consent and assent? Now, the reason we are testing on this question is because it comes up a lot in our ethical code. We talk about confidentiality. We talk about privacy. Privacy is law-driven. Confidentiality is ethical-driven. But you're going to need consent for almost everything you do. You're going to need informed consent if you're going to do research or more intrusive things, or if you're doing punishment. So what does that leave with assent? Why is assent a word we use? Well, is there a difference between consent and assent? There is. So A is out. B, assent is given by individuals over 18 and consent is given by individuals under 18. Not true. Consent is given by people who are legal age to consent. C, consent is given by individuals of legal age, and assent is an agreement from someone who is not able to give legal consent. There we go. Consent, individuals of legal age. Assent is just an agreement from someone who's not able to give legal consent. Not necessarily age, right? Just in general, legal consent. So D, consent is always over 18 and assent is always under 18. Well, consent is always over 18. Typically, it depends on the state and the country. But so it wouldn't always be over 18. But the point is, assent isn't always under 18. Assent is just someone not able to give legal consent. It's an agreement. Okay, so our answer here is C. Consent is given by individuals of legal age, and assent is an agreement from someone who is not able to give legal consent. Okay, please like and subscribe. Check out bcbastudy.com. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.